The Grand Plaza Hotel's chandeliers glittered above us as my family gathered to celebrate Dad's 60th birthday. My brother James had gone out of his way to announce that he'd reserved the city's priciest ballroom in its most exclusive hotel. What he didn't realize was that I owned the place. Sarah, my mother's voice carried that familiar hint of disapproval. Couldn't you have made a little more effort for your father's big day? I looked down at my simple, elegant dress, intentionally modest, though it had cost far more than the designer outfit she was wearing. Not that she'd ever know that. Sorry, Mom, I said lightly. You know how it is living on a consultant's paycheck. James smirked over the rim of his champagne glass. Still doing that consulting thing? What's it been now, 5 years? In reality, it had been 5 years since I began acquiring luxury hotels through my company, Aurora Hospitality Group. The whole consultant label was a convenient front, allowing me to visit my properties without revealing that I owned them. Something like that, I replied, casually, watching the staff move with precision, the very service I had personally trained them to deliver. My phone buzzed softly. A message from Marcus, my actual executive assistant. Q3 results for Grand Plaza exceed projections. Profits up 40% since acquisition. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss expansion. At least Rebecca has a real career, Mom sighed, nodding proudly toward my sister, who was flashing her law firm partnership ring to anyone who would look. When are you going to find a proper job, Sarah? I hid a smile, thinking about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Rebecca's firm was pitching legal services to Aurora Hospitality, unaware they'd be presenting to the sister they loved to underestimate. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said evenly. Fine. James chuckled. You live in that tiny downtown apartment while I'm about to close on a penthouse here at the Grand Plaza. If only he knew his pending purchase had been sitting on my desk waiting for final approval. The inflated price he bragged about? Something I'd noticed but decided not to correct, yet. Speaking of which, James continued smugly. After dinner, I'll give you all a tour of my soon-to-be home. The hotel managers promised me a private showing. Right on cue, Thomas Chin, the Grand Plaza's general manager, approached our table. I'd personally hired him 2 years earlier. Mr. Thompson, Thomas began politely before spotting me. His eyes widened just a fraction before his professional composure returned. Miss Thompson, welcome back. I didn't realize you'd be attending this evening. The hotel's performing exceptionally this quarter. The table went silent. Her hotel? James froze mid-sip, champagne glass suspended. My family's expressions shifted from confusion to shock as Thomas continued, oblivious to the revelation he'd just delivered. Yes, ever since Miss Thompson acquired the Grand Plaza Hotel Group 2 years ago, revenue has doubled, he said cheerfully. The wellness center she commissioned has been particularly profitable. Mom's perfect social smile faltered. Sarah, what on earth is he talking about? I took a slow sip of champagne before answering. Aurora Hospitality Group, that's my company. We purchase and manage luxury hotels worldwide. The Grand Plaza was one of our first acquisitions. That's impossible, Rebecca blurted. Aurora Hospitality is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They own nearly half the luxury hotels in the country. Closer to 60% now, I said, pulling up Aurora's portfolio on my phone. The Martinez Group deal closed last week. James had gone pale, finally realizing who truly controlled his future penthouse. But you're just a consultant, he stammered. That's just the cover, I explained calmly. It helps me visit our hotels unnoticed. Employees perform better when they don't realize the owner's watching. Thomas, sensing the tension, smoothly excused himself. Shall I bring up the penthouse contracts for your brother's purchase, Miss Thompson? Later, Thomas, I said with a small smile. Let's focus on Dad's birthday for now. He nodded and left us in stunned silence. Dad hadn't spoken a single word. The confidence he always carried seemed to crumble before my eyes. The consulting work, Mom began weakly, was how I kept an eye on our properties, I finished for her. While everyone assumed I was barely scraping by, I was quietly building one of the biggest hospitality empires on the planet. My phone buzzed again, a message from Marcus, updating tomorrow's schedule. Law firm presentations confirmed. Your sister's firm goes first at 9 a.m. Rebecca was already blowing up my phone, no doubt trying to verify what she'd just discovered. Our firm's pitching tomorrow. It's for Aurora Hospitality, she typed. Yes, I replied. Though you may want to update your proposal. Your numbers are out of date. Her response came fast. How could you possibly know what figures we're using? Because I've already reviewed your pitch deck, I said calmly. I personally go through every major proposal myself. I opened the file on my phone. And you might want to rethink your fee structure. You're about 20% over the market average. James finally spoke, his voice tight. The penthouse is overpriced, I added. But I've been too busy finalizing the Singapore luxury hotel acquisition to adjust the listing. Mom's hand shook slightly as she lifted her wine glass. All those family vacations we didn't invite you on because we thought you couldn't afford them. They were at hotels I owned, I finished. Yes, I know, I saw the receipts. This has to be a joke, James muttered, though even he didn't sound convinced. Some elaborate prank. Mr. Chin. I called to the manager hovering nearby. Please show my family the owner's suite. It's time they saw how their struggling sister actually lives when she's in town. We ascended in the private elevator to the top floor. I watched their reflections in the mirrored walls, eyes wide, faces pale. Their entire world was shifting, everything they believed about me unraveling in real time. The doors opened directly into a breathtaking 5,000 square foot penthouse with sweeping city views. Compared to this, James's dream apartment looked like a walk-in closet. This is your suite, Mom whispered, gazing at the museum-quality art and custom furnishings. Yes, I said. I have similar accommodations at all our hotels. I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. That building across the street? Also mine. The one beside it? I bought it last month. Rebecca had stopped in front of a Frame magazine cover, my recent Forbes feature, Top 40 Under 40, the most influential women in hospitality. How do we never know? She asked softly. Because you didn't want to, I said plainly. It was easier to label me a failure than question your own assumptions. My phone vibrated again, another message from Marcus. Singapore deal finalized. Company valuation now exceeds $10 billion. Dad's voice was unusually quiet when he finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? I asked, turning toward them. For 5 years, every family gathering has been the same routine. Get a real job, Sarah. Stop pretending to be a businesswoman. Be more like your siblings. I pressed a hidden panel, revealing a sleek control hub behind the wall. While you were mocking my career choices, I was building this. Aurora Hospitality now owns over 200 luxury properties across 5 continents. That consulting work you made fun of, I added, that was me, personally evaluating every property before acquisition. James stood by the window, staring out, likely rethinking his pricey penthouse deal. The contract's canceled, I said. The inflated price was because the sales team didn't realize I was the owner. I'll have them draw up a new one, at fair market value. If you still want it, that is. Mom stepped forward, her designer heels sinking into the plush carpet. A carpet that probably cost more than her car. We had no idea. Clearly, I replied, pressing another button. Screens descended from the ceiling, filling the room with live data from Aurora's global network. Would you like to see what your unemployed daughter has been working on? I asked. Here's our new resort in Singapore, the Dubai development, and the European luxury chain we just acquired. Rebecca finally found her voice again. That sharp, polished lawyer tone she always used when cornered. Our firm's presentation tomorrow won't be needed, I interrupted sharply. I've already made my decision. I'm going with Mitchell and Associates. Their proposal was far more creative and much more affordable. But we're family, she stammered. I gave a cool smile. Interesting. That never seemed to matter when you all laughed at my career choices. When you left me out of family trips because you assumed I couldn't pay my way. Or when you hosted business meetings in hotels I actually owned, without once realizing my connection to them. Just then, Thomas appeared, pushing a cart topped with chilled champagne. Miss Thompson, he said politely, shall we continue your father's birthday celebration up here? I watched the shock ripple across my family's faces as they realized the staff was awaiting my command, not James's. Yes, Thomas, I replied calmly. And please have the expansion plans brought up as well. I might as well show my family what they've been underestimating. While Thomas and his team set everything in motion with their usual precision, I turned back to my silent relatives. Did it ever cross your minds, I asked evenly, why you always receive the best desserts? Why your restaurant bookings were never turned down? Or why the staff treated you like VIPs, even when your behavior didn't warrant it? Mom sank into one of the custom-designed sofas, each piece worth more than her entire house. All those times we bragged about staying at the Grand Plaza, she murmured. You were bragging about staying at my hotel, I finished for her. Just like you bragged about eating in my restaurants, shopping in my retail complexes, and relaxing at my resorts. James was still frozen, staring out at the sweeping skyline. The penthouse I wanted is right below this one, I explained. But this suite isn't on the market. Ownership has its privileges. Around us, the digital displays continued cycling through Aurora's worldwide operations, the empire I had quietly built while they assumed I was barely scraping by. Every property, every merger, every triumph they'd been too dismissive to notice. The Singapore acquisition closed today, I said, gesturing toward a nearby screen. It's valued at $2.3 billion. And that urgent meeting I skipped Christmas for? I was finalizing the deal for Europe's most prestigious hotel chain. I gave a small smile. While you were pitying me for missing family gatherings, I was building something remarkable. Rebecca's eyes landed on the financial reports lying open on my desk. She picked them up, her hands trembling. These figures, she breathed. They're larger than our entire firm's client portfolio. Yes, I said, taking the papers gently from her. Aurora Hospitality Group's current valuation sits just over $10 billion. Not too bad for someone you all assumed couldn't hold a real job. Dad stood at the window, staring out at the city skyline, my skyline. I misjudged you, Sarah, he said quietly. We all did. Yes, you did, I agreed evenly. But now you have a choice. You can remain the family who mocked their billionaire daughter because of their own prejudice, or become the family who finally learns to look beyond appearances. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, reminding me about tomorrow's board meeting. Now then, I said, tucking the phone away. Shall we celebrate Dad's birthday? The staff's prepared something special, though perhaps not quite as special as they might have if they'd known the owner would be joining. As my family tried to absorb the truth, I gazed out at the sunset draping the city in gold. Success, I thought, isn't always about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about letting them realize on their own just how wrong they were. Mom finally found her voice again. All those times we insisted on paying for your dinners here were entertaining, I finished, smiling faintly. Watching you proudly cover bills at restaurants I owned, boasting about your connections to staff who actually worked for me. It was quite an education in human behavior. The Christmas party last year, James said suddenly. When you said you couldn't afford to chip in for the venue. I own the venue, I nodded. Just like I own the hotel where you got married, the resort where Rebecca toasted her promotion, and the restaurant where Dad announced his retirement. Thomas returned with more attendants, the suite now transformed for the celebration. Miss Thompson, he said with a courteous bow. Shall we serve dinner on the terrace? The sunset view is spectacular tonight. Perfect, I replied. Then I turned to my family. Shall we? We have much to talk about over dinner, perhaps a few long overdue apologies, and some lessons about judging others too quickly. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't struggling. They're simply busy building an empire while everyone else is busy talking.